How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Liberty Hour, streaming through Spreaker Studio, the 16 Jackson AJ1 Twitter account, and the A2 Jack YouTube channel. I'm back with my friend Cameron. We were just finished talking about his experience over in Chile and his 2-year mission, and now we're going to get into some other countries, one specifically, another one in South America, and talk about some U.S. relations stuff that's been going on recently right now. And the first one is Venezuela. So there's been a lot of stuff going on with Venezuela over the last few months with the Trump administration and everything that's been going on with the humanitarian crisis there. And I apologize, my computer has been being very slow with this one Reuters article that I have. Let me pull it up on my laptop, and then hopefully we should be good there. So give me 1 sec with that, everyone. And sorry, I apologize for the little technical difficulties here. Hope everyone is having a good day, though, so far. This is the second show back after being done with school. I know some people who are watching from Sierra College are finishing up their finals today, so if you still have any tonight, good luck with that. Hopefully all your scores came out very good, and glad that everything's all done. So looks like I finally have this article pulled up on my laptop here, and this is as of 12 hours ago from Reuters. So the United States tells foreign firms to stop jet fuel trading with Venezuela. This is one of many things that have been going on with our relations with them lately. The United States told some large foreign firms this week they should stop trading jet fuel with Venezuela or face sanctions, according to two industry sources, ratcheting up pressure intended at removing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power. United States State Department officials made calls into several large Swiss and British-based trading houses aimed at limiting commercial and military flights in Venezuela. When asked about the calls, the State Department officials said, quote, "We continue to engage with companies in the energy sector on the possible risks they face by conducting business with Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA. The pressure, part of Washington's efforts to oust Maduro in favor of opposition leader Juan Guaido, follows similar calls in March. United States officials told global trading houses and oil refiners at the time to reduce dealing with Venezuela or face sanctions themselves, even if the trades were not prohibited by U.S. sanctions." So obviously, United States has been having a lot of say and a lot of influence in certain things that have been going on ever since the humanitarian crisis has occurred over the last few months, and actually even towards the last year, as basically their currency is worth very little at this point. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Cameron, of what are your thoughts on what the Trump administration is doing in Venezuela? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Overall, just what's your thoughts in general?
I honestly think that the Trump administration does have good intentions. I don't like when people assume malice and are really critical. I honestly feel a lot for the people of Venezuela, because I know a lot when I was in Chile, I met a lot of people from Venezuela. A lot of them went to Chile, and I have some really close friends that are from there. And honestly, it's really terrible when you hear the things like I've heard some firsthand accounts of just the most awful things that happen there. And really, the economy is just terrible. But I really like, because I was reading a little bit about it today, and I like what one of the guys in the Trump administration said, that they obviously don't want Maduro in there because he's a terrible person, but they don't want the United States to be the people, like the country that decides the winner. They want the Venezuelans to decide, right? And I think that's where the United States has made mistakes in the past with other countries like this, is that the United States plays too big of a role, and they kind of pick the winner, right? And then the country kind of feels like they're victims, almost like the United States decided it. And I think that they're trying to help in every way possible, but without being the deciders of who's going to be the president, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes. And you know, what's really interesting with this is you even see some Democrats who have come out and supported Trump on certain things. There's even at one point, and I can't seem to pull it up right now, but even Bernie said one thing on it, and he not condemning or not supporting necessarily what Trump's doing in Venezuela, but he didn't condemn it. Now that can also go along with the fact that Bernie is running for president, and there's a lot of comparisons that people will throw out there between Bernie and Venezuela, so he could be trying to distance himself on that specifically.
I thought he loved socialism.
Yeah, well, like I said, he could be trying on that to just try to distance himself from, looking like a Venezuela, super Venezuela socialist supporter. But obviously, there's been a lot of sanctions that have been going on in Venezuela with the U.S. putting sanctions on them. And, the U.S. military, as of May 1st, has not been given orders to prepare for war in Venezuela, although some people have assumed that they would directly intervene. And
I don't think so.
and so, I just hope that that it doesn't get to that point. I'm not expecting it to get to that point. My issue, though, is just that, like you said, that they should be able to choose, who's going to lead their country themselves. And I don't like the fact of having United States resources going towards something that has to do with another country. That's just me. But I mean, I do get what you're saying on that.
Oh, well, honestly, I think that the United States has I think it's their duty to try and influence it in every way possible that it goes a good way, because we've seen how it's gone so far, right? We obviously don't want it to keep going downhill. Like, we want to help, but I think that they have to be careful in the way that they do help. And I don't think the United States will get involved militarily. I think if you look at Trump's reputation, or like his policy wise, what he's done in the last 3 years, he's really more of like an isolationist. I don't think he wants to get involved in wars, right? Like, that's not his style. That's not, if you look at his record, and that's not what he does. That's not what he's done in the last 2 years. So that'd be really out of character for him to do that.
Yeah, he has pulled a fair amount of ground troops out of our wars that current wars that we are still fighting, either at least with special ops forces or drone strikes in Afghanistan and Iraq. He has pulled back with taken away about half the troops, I believe it was, in Afghanistan, and I want to say most of the troops in Iraq. We do continue drone strikes in certain areas and stuff like that, but yes, that's one thing that I have been happy to see out of the Trump administration is even though there have been calls to increase military spending when it comes to that spectrum, he has pulled out of having more troops go into certain places. So I definitely agree with him on that respect, which is a good thing that I don't think he actually gets enough credit for. But one thing I will say is my issue is if we do try to influence certain places, leaders or elections or something like that, we could see consequences like you even mentioned from the past in certain nations where we've done back in Guatemala, back during the Reagan administration, what we have seen under the Obama administration and the early parts of the Trump administration with, propping up certain people in like Libya and, stuff that's been going on in Syria and stuff like that. But I'm not expecting it to get to that bad of a part. I just am expecting this to be, a typical... I'm not going to say an overthrow. I would say a typical revolution from the Venezuelan people to get a new government in place, and that is something that I do think should happen.
No, it's not going to get any worse than it is now. It's honestly terrible down there. Like, when you hear the stories, like firsthand accounts of what's happening there, it's like honestly one of the poorest. It's so sad that such a rich country could go so bad, and I think a lot of it was due to a lot of there was obviously a lot of corruption in the government, but I think that naturally a lot of socialist style governments like draw in corruption. I think that that's one of the weaknesses of socialism, is that when you have a tiny group that's in charge of administering everything in a government, I think that it breeds corruption a little bit. So it's really just sad. And the people are honestly so good. Like, there was one like family, these like group of like 5 people that when I was in Chile, when I was in Santa Cruz, I met them later because one of the members of our church, Hermano Rebudo, he was just in like the center of the city, like down by they call it Centro, like in the downtown. That's what it is, downtown. And he found these 4 Venezuelans or 5 Venezuelans that were just sleeping on the ground in the middle of this park because they had just fled from Venezuela. They used every dime that they had to get a plane ticket to end up in Chile. And they were just sleeping there on the ground for like a week. And he took them into their house and he fed them and helped them find a place for them to rent a house. And he paid for their first few months of rent until they could get on their feet. And like, we went and talked to those people, and they're honestly such good people. There's so many just amazing people from Venezuela, and they're all so nice, but it's just terrible to see what the government has done to them.
Yeah, I agree. And so hopefully, this what we're seeing take place, this uprising, can actually end up with very positive effects in terms of a new government being put in place in Venezuela, new leader being put in place. So hopefully everything ends up going good there after a certain amount of time. But another place where we are seeing relations, and relations have never really been good with the United States and Iran, but Iran is another place we have seen specifically where tensions have seemed to be somewhat heightened as of lately. This is an article that was in the Washington Post yesterday. Faced with relentless relentless American pressure, Iran starts to hit back. Iran has made a dramatic shift in how it confronts the United States, abandoning a policy of restraint in recent weeks for a series of offensive actions aimed at pushing the White House to rethink its efforts at isolating Tehran. That's one of the places, I think, that's where the United States Embassy, I believe, is, say diplomats and analysts. With the Trump administration tightening economic sanctions and intensifying military pressure, Iran is now seeking to highlight the cost it could also impose on the United States, for instance, by disrupting the world's oil supply without taking actions likely to trigger an all-out war. When 4 ships were damaged in the Persian Gulf last week, including 2 Saudi tankers and an Iraqi one, U.S. and Arab officials said they suspected Iran had ordered the sabotage. A Lebanese newspaper supportive of Iran's ally Hezbollah boasted that the attacks were a message from Tehran delivered via UAE and Saudi mailboxes. There's a lot more in that article as well that talks about specific things that we have seen that have increased the tensions or heightened the tensions with the U.S. and Iran lately. President Trump, back on the 19th, which was 4 days ago, that would be Sunday, sent out a tweet saying, if Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. And, we've seen, Trump have these tweets to the point where, whenever he says something like that, it's almost become a norm at this point. One thing that's really interesting though is, if another president had said this, people would say, oh my God, we're going to go to war, something's going to happen, stuff like that. And, overall at the end of the day, it just, seems like that he's just saying, don't do this because you understand, what we will do in response. Yeah. And, that does seem to have worked at least somewhat in the case of North Korea, as we have seen, they've still been testing missiles, but it seems to have been, the tensions have seemed to lessen, ever since he actually, said those words to them. It's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening with Iran. And that's where I actually wanted to ask you is, what do you see coming out of this whole, scenario, with, what Trump's tweet said, everything that's been going on with the United States and Iran as of recently?
Yeah, again, I really hate the media because obviously the media has been at war with Trump since he ran for presidency, right? They had to paint him in the worst light all the time, and lately they've been trying to, at least this last week, they've been trying to paint him like he wants to go to war with Iran, when, like I said earlier, that's not Trump's administration. They're more isolationist than even Obama was, right? So, and
I'll give you that's for sure.
If you look, honestly, no conservatives, there's no conservative that is saying that we should go to war with Iran, and I don't think that they're going to take any military action. I think that that's something that bugs me is when there's so many people making comments about that when it's obviously not even in the question. And I think that's what any president would have done given the situation, right? You have to show force a little bit when stuff like that is happening. So, but no, I think that a lot of it is just done. It's all politics where they're just trying to paint the other side and kind of demonize the other side. When I think that I don't like when people. It's something that something that I like a lot is don't assume malice where ignorance or stupidity will do, right? So when Trump tweets something like that, or a lot of stuff that happens, so many people assume malice immediately when ignorance or just being Trump will do, right? That's just how Trump is. So don't take it so seriously.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people do, obviously, because he is the president of the United States. But as obviously, even as you saw him running for president, there were many things that were said that obviously he never agreed with or never did. And like you mentioned, I don't believe Trump is a person that really wants to go out and is willing to go straight to war with another nation. I don't think that he would do that. My issue though is there are certain people in his administration that I am worried about. Over time, his national security advisor John Bolton has tended to be a bit of a war hawk on certain things when it comes to the Middle East, and he made an announcement last week that the United States is deploying a carrier strike group and bomber task force to the U.S. Central Command region, which is going to be pretty much on the footstep of Iran, and that's my only worry is when it comes to this is not President Trump himself, but certain people in his administration, and that's what I think it comes down to. I don't expect the United States to go to war with Iran. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't want to see something get to the point where we're going to see any offensive action take place. That's just me.
Yeah, and again, Trump, obviously, if you look at his past the last 2 years, he doesn't do the best job at hiring people, right? Obviously the people that in his administration are not the best people for the job sometimes, but even both he hasn't said anything calling for a war. The United States is just trying to show our hand in the deal, they're not going to back down, and that's something honestly that is something that I like about the Trump administration, though, is that
And I hate to interrupt you. That's the end of part 4. We'll be right back with part 5.